Well, welcome. We're so happy you're here. There are seats up here in the splash zone. And if you anticipate wanting to ask us questions, it would probably be better if you sit up here a little closer and you'll be picked up on one of the mics. All right, so we'll tell you a little bit about what we've got planned for today, and shortly we'll ask you a little bit about what you would like for us to address if we haven't anticipated that. We're going to define single session therapy for you the way we think about single session therapy, and that's a little bit different than some of the other people in the field. We'll talk a little bit about why it's a good idea to think about single session therapy. We find that there's a particular way of thinking about doing therapy that's important in order to be able to do single session therapy. So we'll talk a little bit about what our mindset is, and then how those mindsets get translated into some general principles for conducting a single session. We'll give you an opportunity to practice. After lunch, we'll talk a little bit more about walk-in therapy that might even be more novel for some of you. I know we have some of our students in here that work in our clinic and do walk-ins all of the time. Some other people might have different ideas about walk-ins, what it is and what it isn't. We'll be talking about that after lunch.
The main experience that Monty and I have with single sessions is with the walk-in kind of that. The walk-in form of service delivery,
right,
of single sessions. So we'll probably maybe the second half of the day we'll be focusing more on the walk-in part.
We'd like to encourage people to start their own walk-in services, and there's ways you can do that in private practice we'll talk about. There's ways you can do that in agencies, schools, clinics, and we want to spend some time giving you some ideas about how you could get started. One of the things, and we'll mention this a little bit later, is that we tend to, one of the really important things about doing single session therapy is to think of every session as being your last, not your first. Because all of you have all said you've had that experience where somebody came one time and they didn't come a second time. So if you treated every session as if it were the last, that's your first step in becoming a very competent single session therapist.
Yeah, sometimes we say it is, I think of every session as if it could be the last session.
Could be the last, yeah. All right, so here's some ideas that we have about why you would want to be considering doing single sessions, or why we do single sessions. Somebody mentioned health insurance, managed care organizations wanting you to be briefer.
So there's good reasons for this and not so good reasons.
Yeah.
There's pressure on all of us, the people that pay for services would rather that services be briefer. Sometimes that could be a good thing, but that can also create problems sometimes too.
Those of you that are interested in making a living, one way to make a living doing single session therapy is to negotiate with managed care organizations about doing briefer therapy. I mean, you can negotiate with these folks about how they pay. So you might actually find that if you do brief therapy, they might be more willing to refer people to you because you're not costing them as much money. This is a fancy way of saying that the longer you see somebody, the more likely they are to catch your neurosis. One way I think about this is if at the end of the session, your first session, you say, so are Tuesdays at 2 o'clock good for you? There's a message there that they have a problem that has an undefined end because they need to be clearing their calendar for Tuesdays at 2 o'clock. So it's a very unhopeful message. It communicates to the client that they really have severe problems. Even if you see the person every week and you haven't communicated that to them, they're thinking, gosh, I need to continue in therapy. something must be wrong with me. I've seen the case where a client comes in every week and there's a new crisis in their life. And I experimented I asked the students, why don't you see them every schedule the next appointment for 3 weeks from now and see what happens. Well, 3 weeks from now they had a crisis, but it had been in the last 3 days. So what we learned is every time you see that kind of, some clients, they've had a recent crisis, and that's what they talk about in the therapy session. It doesn't matter whether you see them once a month or once a week. So it's not their problem, it's your problem. You've just created a problem for them.
It's maybe a less elegant way of saying this is that the less time that we spend with clients, the more opportunities we have to do harm. Right? You know how it's like people nowadays, like in the medical systems, people want to make hospital stays as brief as possible, and one of the reasons they do that is because people get sick in hospitals.
That's right.
Yeah.
This is probably one of the most masterful reasons for doing single session therapy and walk-in therapy too, by the way.
How can we serve more people more responsively?
Yeah.
Right.
You want to just give them a hint with the Austin Child Guidance story.
So, this is for walk-in single session services. This is probably the most common reason that like an organization, an agency will give for starting a walk-in service is because they're concerned about a long waiting list. And about 5 years ago, I've been involved with a place in Austin called the Austin Child Guidance Center, and worked with them around starting a walk-in service. And they had, and the main reason was that the executive director was really concerned about a long waiting list. Sometimes, like depending on the time of year, like in the middle of the school year, the waiting list might get to like sometimes 3 or 4 months. And of course, for children, that's like a lifetime. And so we started the walk-in service, and on the day that they started the walk-in service, they ended their wait list. So for the last 5 years, no wait list. What they did was, they now say if somebody calls up and asks about getting an appointment, if one of their therapists has an opening within the next 2 weeks, that person gets an appointment. If not, they're asked to call back again. And by the way, we have our walk-in service. And you can use that as much as you want until something comes up. You can come in, have a session, you could come back again, if you're still looking for an appointment, there isn't an opening. No more waiting list.
And all of the therapists that see families by appointment still have a full schedule. So it hasn't reduced their load, it's just reduced the number of clients that are waiting to get in the front door to see them. We find single sessions especially suited. I'm not sure. We find it suited for a variety of cultures, especially those that don't have the cultural idea that everybody needs to be in long-term therapy. You know what I mean? I remember years ago when I was in private practice, I had that client that moved out of town, came to see me. The first time I said, so what's the problem you're here to work on? I said, well, I saw Dr. Shmoo in Austin for several years. I just moved here, and I've got my local dentist, I've got my local hairdresser, and you're my therapist. So when Michael was asking about what populations is single session therapy really not appropriate for, it's really not appropriate for people that see kind of having a weekly or bi-weekly chat with a therapist as being an important part of their overall mental health.
Also for people that, their lives are such that the idea of coming every week to see somebody just doesn't seem manageable in their lives.
Yeah. I think there are a lot of people that say, yeah, I'd like to get therapy, but I don't have an hour a week. And, you know, they've all seen the television shows. I don't have an hour a week that I can spend doing that. It happens anyway. So we've all established that, right? It happens anyway. So if you're going to see people one time, we'll get to it in a minute, but one session is really the most frequent number of sessions people have anyway, so why don't we prepare for that rather than prepare for long-term therapy and assume that the one session is the no-show for the second session is unique.
And that's where we get to why not. It's the usual, it's not the unusual.
Yeah.
So we'll talk about this when we very briefly talk about research a little later on, but if you have a client coming in for his first session, and all you know is that you have a client coming in, you know nothing about the client, and somebody asked you to predict how many sessions you're going to have, your best guess will always be one. It's the mode.
We're thinking there's three kinds of single session therapies. There's the planned single session therapies. So some clinics offer therapy, offer one-time sessions, and you make an appointment to do that. That's like Austin Child Guidance no, they don't do the walk-ins on that day. But some places have single sessions by appointment. You know, you call up to make an appointment, the person on the phone says, yes, we do one session, it costs this much, and so forth. Or there could be planned walk-in single sessions like we have in our clinic at the CCS, where people are told you can come in Thursday afternoon after 1:30 and have a single session with a therapist. There's the unplanned sessions that we've all talked about, where you had somebody that you met with and decided at the end of the session, and they decided at the end of the session they didn't need to come back, or they didn't come back and just forgot to call you and tell you that they didn't need another session. And then there's the mutual one where you've decided at the end, they say, you know, you've been really helpful, I don't think I need to come back, what do you think, Doc? And you say, I think you're right. Use the money you were going to spend on therapy to take a nice vacation. So we will be talking about both planned and unplanned single session therapy this morning, and this afternoon we'll talk about the application of single session therapy in a walk-in environment. Arnie promised a demonstration of 5-minute single session therapy.
Dr. Switzer?
Yes, come in. I'm just washing my hands.
I'm Catherine Bigman. Janet Carlisle referred me.
Oh, yes. Still being buried alive in a box.
Yes, that's me. Should I lay down?
Oh, no, we don't do that anymore. Just have a seat. And let me tell you a bit about our billing. I charge $5 for the first 5 minutes, and then absolutely nothing after that. How does that sound?
That sounds great. Too good to be true, as a matter of fact.
Well, I can almost guarantee you that our session won't last the full 5 minutes. Now, we don't do any insurance billing, so you would either have to pay in cash or by check.
Wow, okay.
And I don't make change.
All right.
And go.
Go.
Well, tell
What?
me about the problem that you wish to address.
Oh, okay. Well, I have this fear of being buried alive in a box. I start thinking about being buried alive and I begin to panic.
Has anyone ever tried to bury you alive in a box?
No, but truly thinking about it does make my life horrible. I mean, I can't go through tunnels or be in an elevator or in a house, anything boxy.
So what you're saying is you're claustrophobic.
Yes, that's it.
All right, well, let's go, Catherine. I'm going to say 2 words to you right now. I want you to listen to them very, very carefully. Then I want you to take them out of the office with you and incorporate them into your life.
Well, shall I write them down?
Well, if it makes you comfortable, it's just 2 words. We find most people can remember them.
Okay.
You ready?
Yes.
Okay, here they are. Stop it!
I'm sorry?
Stop it!
Stop it?
Yes, S-T-O-P, new word, I-T.
So, what are you saying?
You know, it's funny. I say 2 simple words, and I cannot tell you the amount of people who say exactly the same thing you're saying. I mean, this is not Yiddish, Catherine. This is English. Stop it.
So, I should just stop it.
There you go. I mean, you don't want to go through life being scared of being buried alive in a box, do you? I mean, that sounds frightening.
It is.
Then stop it.
I can't. I mean, it's been with me since childhood.
No, we don't go there. Just stop it.
So, I should just stop being afraid of being buried alive in a box.
You got it. Good go. Well, it's only been 3 minutes, so that will be $3.
Actually, I only have a 5, so
Well, I don't make change.
then I guess I'll take the full 5 minutes.
Fine. All right. Well, what other problems would you like to address?
I'm bulimic. I stick my fingers down my throat.
Stop it! What are you, nut of some kind? Don't do that.
But I'm compelled to. My mom used to call me fatty.
No, we don't go there.
But I've been having this dream.
No, we don't go there either.
But my horoscope did say...
We definitely don't go there. Just stop it. What else?
Well, I have self-destructive relationships with men.
Stop it! You want to be with a man, don't you?
Yes.
Well, then stop it. Don't be such a big baby.
I wash my hands a lot.
That's all right.
It is?
I wash my hands all the time. There's a lot of germs out there. Yeah, don't worry about that one.
I'm afraid to drive.
Well, stop it! How are you going to get around? Get in the car and drive, you kook. Stop it!
You stop it! You stop it!
What's the problem, Catherine?
I don't like this. I don't like this therapy at all. You're just telling me to stop it.
And you don't like that?
No, I don't.
So you think we're moving too fast? Is that it?
Yes. Yes, I do.
All right, then let me give you 10 words that I think will clear everything up for you. You want to get a pad and a pencil for this one?
All right.
Are you ready? Mm-hmm. All right, here are the 10 words. Stop it or I'll bury you alive in a box!
So, our hour is up, we're done, right?
Our workshop is done.
Our
That's it?
workshop is done.
No, there-
Questions? So our clients want to see something happen relatively soon. Maybe not in the first 5 minutes, but they do want to have some results. This is another approach. This predates Bob Newhart a little bit. It's not the stop it, but it's the snap out of it approach to single session therapy. That's not necessarily what we're advocating either. All right, so we thought we would spend some time on a very brief history of single session therapy. So people are frequently surprised to know that Sigmund Freud was the first single session therapist, because most of us attribute kind of the Freudian model of long-term psychoanalysis, the lying on the couch talking about dreams, as being Freud's work. And it was. But if you look at some of his early cases, he frequently only saw people for one time, one consultation. I guess my favorite one is when he cured the composer Gustav Mahler of impotence on a hike in the Alps. I'm not sure whether there was anything psychoanalytically connected to the impotence or the mountains that they were hiking in, but it was a...
So they went for a long walk, and then that was it.
And that was all it took. Some of you are familiar with Milton Erickson. Crystal Fullen helped us out with a research project recently. Bill O'Hanlon published a book 20 years ago where he took every one of Erickson's published cases and categorized them according to what the presenting problem was, what the interventions were, and how long Erickson met with each of these people. And so Crystal's done a great analysis of the cases that were in that book, and there were 139 cases that O'Hanlon and Hexam looked at. And this is a summary of the length of sessions, number of sessions. First sessions was 67, 2 sessions 26, and so forth. So you can see that for the most part, Erickson was a single session therapist.
Yeah, and I say Monty and I have both been influenced by Erickson's work, and so one thing that clearly, if you read much about his work, I mean, you come away from it knowing very well that good things can happen in one session. Yeah.
Erickson, most of us know Erickson as a hypnotist, as being a pioneer in the use of hypnosis. Many of these cases, in fact, most of these cases are not hypnosis. Or if you were to talk to Erickson, they were all hypnosis, but they didn't all involve a formal ritual trance induction. Now, these three characters are the more modern single-session therapists. Tallman published a book on single-session therapy in 1990.
Moshe Tallman is on the left.
Yeah, so that's Tallman. This is Michael Hoyt. Some of you met Michael when he was here a couple years ago to do a workshop for us. And hardly anybody knows Bob Rosenbaum back here. He's
the three of them worked together at Kaiser Permanente in California. Tallman, he did something, I always think of this as rather courageous. We asked about this a little earlier. He worked a lot with families, and he began to notice that there were a lot of families that he saw that came one time and didn't return. And he was concerned about this. He thought, there must be something I'm doing wrong. And so he was courageous enough to decide that he was going to, after a period of a few years of noticing this, that he was going to contact as many of those former clients as he could find and ask them for feedback, thinking that what he was going to learn was, what should I have done differently, you know? And to his surprise, most of those clients told him that they didn't come back because they were satisfied with what they got in that one session. That got them thinking. He started talking with his colleagues. Of course, Michael Hoyt is kind of maybe the first person who's best known in terms of what we call brief therapy. They were working together, and they came up with this idea that they were going to start a service in which people could, where they created an option where people could choose to be seen for one session and one session only by appointment. Now that single session service, as we were talking a little earlier, like they would make somebody would, there'd be a phone call and a fairly lengthy conversation, some forms to fill out that got sent in, and then the therapist would be able to look at that before the session, and then there would be a follow-up telephone contact. So we think of that as 3 sessions, but that's how typically a single session by appointment service operates.
And here's another single session he wrote. So Lucy obviously saw the Bob Newhart movie. All right, so going back to the mid-50s when the Kogan study was published, people have tried to determine what the modal number of sessions, remember from statistics modal, what's the most popular number of therapy sessions that people come to. And Arnie and I have been saying for years, 1, and we've cited this data. Michael Hoyt's corrected us and said that that's not correct. So what do you suppose Michael told us the modal number of sessions is? The most frequently scheduled number of therapy sessions in the U.S. population. Oh, you've heard that, huh?
What was the answer? I didn't hear. 0, yes.
0. Michael said 0 because most people don't schedule an appointment. So 0 is the modal number of sessions, but of the scheduled appointments or contacts with clients and therapists, it's 1. And it varies from study to study what the percentage is. One of the interesting things that Tallman's group found was when they looked at the records, they not only before they did the planned single session project, they just took a look at the clinic visits for the whole Kaiser system, and they found that the modal number was 1. They also contacted those single session cases to find out about satisfaction, and they found numbers that equaled Moshe's own personal analysis, and that is 2/3 to 75% of the people that came only one time were happy and satisfied and got what they wanted. And that was regardless of whether their therapist had been trained as a psychiatrist, a psychologist, a social worker, a professional counselor. Didn't matter about the professional training. Didn't matter about the theoretical orientation, whether they were psychoanalytic or behavioral or structural family therapy. That didn't matter. And these were cases where the therapist hadn't set out to do single session therapy. These were accidental single session cases. So although Arnie and I have some ways of thinking theoretically about our own work, single session work is pretty much theoretically agnostic. As long as you think something good can happen in one session, you can do single session therapy. So Arnie and I came across this interesting study a few years ago titled Early Withdrawal from Mental Health Treatment, Implications for Clinical Practice. So these researchers were concerned about the clients that didn't come back for therapy because they had planned, their way of working is that people come back and they come back and they come back.
Their orientation was that meant failure.
Yeah, that they had somehow failed, and so they wanted to investigate what the problem was and come up with some recommendations for therapists about how to prevent this dropout problem. So this data is from their meta-analysis of a number of mental health clinics. And they said, let's imagine that 100 people call a clinic to make an appointment for therapy, right? So that's an unusual group, right? If the modal number is 0, these are people that at least called to make an appointment. Of the people that call to make an appointment, how many of them do you expect show up for the first visit? 50? That's exactly right. 50% of the people in most clinics, I don't know if that's the experience. Huh?
Last year has been
50% come for the first appointment. In fact, in our clinic, what we've started doing at the university clinic is if we have 2 first appointments scheduled, we purposely schedule 2 first appointments at the same time. The odds are one or the other won't show up and we'll be busy. So it's a way of efficiently using our time. If you play the numbers, 25% of the time they'll both show up, 25% of the time neither one of them will show up, and 50% of the time one or the other.
So, and you say, so those 50 were coming as clinics are traditionally organized. They were coming not for a session of therapy, that first appointment, it was for intake. Okay, so an intake meeting,
Right.
Which is typical of many mental health services.
Yeah, I've been thinking about this a lot. There's this whole ritual about getting into therapy that involves filling out a lot of forms. Some clinics make you do a full psychological test battery and all of this kind of stuff. And many times that information is not useful. We'll talk about that more a little bit later. But it's as if we're worried, 20% of the time, 10% of the time, some small percentage of the time, somebody will be really severely mentally ill or have be in crisis or danger. They need to have all of that psychological workup. Most of the time, it's not necessary, I don't think. And so it's like we conduct our practice to look at the 10% that need this and the 80 to 90% that we could help without doing that. We subject them to that.
Yeah, so you have to have a first meeting, which might involve lots of paperwork and some discussion and whatnot before the first therapy appointment gets made. And I like to talk about it as it's like you have to have a conversation before you can have a conversation.
Right. I don't know if you've ever called a mental health clinic to get help, but I've heard stories about clients calling and they tell the person to answer the phone, I'm really in a bad place, my boyfriend left me, my dog died, my grandmother's in jail, a whole country western song right there on the phone. And he said, well, wait a minute, you'll have to talk to a scheduling clerk. I just answer the phone. And so they transfer them and they start all over again. You really got to help me. My dog died. My grandmother's in jail. My pickup truck. No. I just schedule appointments. You'll need to tell your therapist about that. Can you come in 2 weeks? And come in 2 weeks. And now they've arrived at their first appointment. And they have to take all of those tests and everything. But they're saying, listen, my grandmother's in jail, my dog died. No, we have to do all this tests. We'll schedule you an appointment for a therapist later. So what percentage of people do you think make it from here to their first therapy appointment? A third. 33% of the people who have leapt through all of those hurdles to get in to see somebody, only 33% of the original
So
100.
33 of that original 100 actually make it to the first session of therapy.
Only 20 are still there by the third session. And only 17 will remain for at least 10 sessions or more.
Which it suggests perhaps that once you get to 3 sessions, then there might be a bunch more sessions.
Yeah. So there's a lot of ways to look at this and interpret it, but one of the reasons that a lot of us got into this field, I think, that we're in, is we want to help people. Well, if 100 people call for our help and only 33 of them make it far enough to get to the therapeutic appointment, then maybe we're not doing our job. Although some people could say that this 50% that came for the assessment, they actually, something happened good in that assessment visit. Maybe something happened, maybe they did talk to their beautician, their school counselor, maybe they talked to somebody else and that's why they didn't return. We don't know what all the reasons are why people don't come back. But this suggests that when people come, again, maybe we might want to treat this as the last session rather than the first of many. Because people vote with their feet. And Michael is absolutely right. There are a lot of theories out there about why people don't come back. It's a flight into health. They're not ready for therapy. They're not motivated, all of those kinds of things. But those are all things that we attribute to clients. It's their pathology is the reason they drop out, not the way we think about treating them. So we've just talked about that. These are some common reasons for why people drop out of therapy. They're resistant. There's stigmas. You know, they want to be seen in the parking lot. Their friends might see them. Not motivated. We talked about that. Not willing to make those financial sacrifices. People can't get babysitters. They can't, the bus doesn't run. Maybe your appointments are from 8 to 5 and they really can't take off from work more than once to come in for a therapy appointment. So there's a lot of common explanations. What other explanations would you have about why people drop out of therapy? Transportation, yeah. The car broke down, the bus, your office isn't on a convenient bus line. Couldn't get a babysitter for the kids.
They didn't like the therapist.
Huh?
They didn't like the therapist.
Didn't like the, no, that never happens. So there are people that can't get along with therapists, right? Just
Had to pay the grandmother's bail.
had to pay their grandmother's bail.
The desire to change is, let's see, the desire to not change but to remain the same is stronger than the desire to change.
Okay, so yeah,
I've seen that especially with abuse clients.
okay. Yeah, it's more comfortable with what you're familiar with than the unfamiliar of change. Okay. Well, we have some other ideas about why people drop out. You might expect that to be true, and you've already heard some of them. So clients came for this screening appointment. They filled out all of these forms, all of that kind of stuff happened. They weren't helped. Why go back? How many of you have gone to a restaurant and had a bad meal? How many of you went back to that restaurant? There you go. So some clients, if you don't help them, they don't come back because why would I come back? We mentioned this one. If you're on a waiting list, you might be on several waiting lists and you happen to go to the very first place that has an opening. It's not, and we've heard this, you probably have too, clients come in and tell you that when you say, so what, you know, why are you here today? Well, because, you know, you were the first person that I could get an appointment with. I called several other places. I have appointments at 5 other places. But yours was the first one that came up, so I came to you. So what other people cause reality problems, what we're calling is practical problems. The bus doesn't run, your schedule is inconvenient, your grandmother's needing to be bailed out of jail. This is our favorite reason for why clients don't come back. They got the help they wanted in the session that they saw you and didn't know that they were supposed to let you know. In your training as therapists, in some place in your training, did they give you some instruction about the importance of termination and how you had to prepare the client for the termination, the end of therapy? And sometimes I remember groups where, you know, if you were going to graduate from the group, you needed to announce your intentions to leave the group a month or 6 weeks ahead of time so that everybody got ready. So we've had all of that training in how therapy is supposed to end, and it needs to be a really clean break. Clients didn't take that course. They don't know they're supposed to call you up and say, I'm terminating with you because you've been really helpful and thank you very much.
Yeah, the problem for us is that the clients don't properly prepare us for their termination.
They don't.
You know, so it's, you know, so then we're wondering,
You know, what happened?
you know, what happened.
Yeah.
So This is data about length of therapy that comes from Australia. The brief story here is that Moshe Talman he's Israeli, left California after a few years, returned to Tel Aviv, where he still is, and somehow he developed this relationship, this very long-term relationship with these folks in Australia.
I think it was because of you, because one of your people from East
Well,
Side.
it was a roundabout, but he spent a lot of time, it's not exactly that Israel is around the corner from Australia, but he's been there many times working with these folks. And Australia actually is the place in the world that has the most single session by appointment services, particularly in the state of Victoria. Australia is divided into states. Victoria is one of those states. It's a very large geographic area that has a lot of small communities and large. The city of Melbourne is in Victoria. And throughout the state, they have public health clinics, each of which offers mental health services, which includes counseling services. And this is data from those mental health clinics in Australia over a 3-year period about length of therapy. So what this says is that first of all, you're reading right. This is over a 3-year period. That's somewhere around 115,000 clients over a 3-year period. And in each of those 3 years, about 43% of clients came once, even though clients are routinely invited to return. So 43% came once. Another 18% came twice. So now we're like over 60% come to 2 sessions or less. And then you can see how, and then you get to the end, like there are a number of clients that are seen for a large number of sessions, but it's a very small percentage of clients you see out there at the end. So this is, we think of this as this very powerful data based partly on the numbers and partly on the fact that it seems almost exactly the same for each of the 3 years.
And yet, most of us get training to work with these clients out here, the 20-plus visits, right? Or even 10-plus, cognitive behavior therapy is 10 sessions or so. Look how many people hang out for 10 sessions. So this, again, is some pretty powerful data that says if we want to bring our services to people in an efficient and effective way, maybe we need to bring services to people that meets their expectations and get in and get out pretty quickly. And Australia's healthcare system, granted, is a bit different than ours. There's no money changing hands for therapy here, but that makes it even more powerful because we frequently, sometimes those of us that work in clinics where the cost is really low, we might think that clients are taking advantage of us because the fee is so small and that's why they keep coming back and keep coming back. But in a place where money isn't an object, people that keep coming back and keep coming back is pretty small, the 1 or 2 sessions. That looks a lot like Erickson's data as well, doesn't it? That 1 or 2 sessions and they're done.
Well, there's also an increasing amount of research that looks at the effectiveness of single sessions as well as things like client satisfaction. We tend to speak just a bit about this research. This is actually from Australia as well, because this is one of the few studies so far that's actually had a non-treatment control group to use as a comparison for the single session treatment group. So this is single sessions by appointment. This happens to be a place that works with adolescents and their families. And some clients were offered a single session and some were offered a wait. So this is like, they look both 1 month post single session and 18 months post single session, and with significantly better outcomes for the treatment groups.